If you've ever walked past the old Royal Victoria Hospital in Montreal, you've probably noticed how it sits on the side of Mount Royal, almost watching the city. It opened in 1893. Massive stone walls, Gothic architecture, long corridors that seemed to stretch forever. For over a century, it treated thousands of patients. Surgery, trauma, infectious disease, psychiatric care. Most hospitals that old, not everyone walked back out. Hi, I'm Asha, and yes, she's got spirits. And if you're here, chances are you've got spirits too. Each week we dive into true hauntings, real Canadian history, and the stories that refuse to stay buried. So dim the lights and let's get into it. Cheers! Hey guys, welcome back to She's Got Spirits. Let's dive into the Grey Nuns and the haunting of Montreal's Royal Victoria Hospital. Before modern medicine, hospitals were hopeful places. They were places people went when things were already very bad. In its early decades, Royal Victoria saw tuberculosis outbreaks, surgical deaths, mental health confinement, and war injuries. The Grey Nuns, a Catholic religious order, were heavily involved in Montreal's healthcare system at the time. They were known for strict discipline, rigid outlines, and deep religious devotion. Patients were expected to obey, especially in psychiatric wards, and that's where the stories begin. The psychiatric wing was reportedly one of the most intense areas of the hospital. In the early 1900s, mental health treatment was primitive. Isolation rooms, physical restraints, sedation, patients left alone for long stretches. Some died there. Some deteriorated. Some were committed involuntarily. Staff journals from the early decades describe disturbed patients screaming through the night. One former nurse in the 1970s reportedly told a colleague that the old wing never felt empty, even during quiet shifts. By the late 20th century, modern medicine had changed much of the hospital's operations, but parts of the original building remained intact, including old stairwells, storage rooms, and sections of tunnel systems connecting buildings underground. Those tunnels are where many of the more recent stories are centered. Hospital workers began reporting strange occurrences in the 1990s. Equipment turning on without being activated, lights flickering in hallways that had already been renovated, elevators stopping at floors where no one had pressed a button. One security guard claimed he saw a figure in what looked like an old-fashioned nurse's uniform walking down a restricted hallway late at night. When he followed, the hallway was empty. No doors open. No one signed in. Another frequently reported experience involved the feeling of being watched in the old psychiatric wing, even after it had been largely decommissioned. Several maintenance workers described hearing faint crying, not loud, not dramatic, just soft, distant sobbing. Always late at night, always in the same corridor. When investigated, nothing was found. One story stands out. A nurse working a late-night shift in the early 2000s reportedly entered a patient room to check on someone recovering from surgery. The patient was asleep, but standing near the window was a woman dressed in gray, not modern-day scrubs, not visitor clothing, something older. The nurse assumed it was a family member who had slipped in. She asked her to leave. The woman didn't respond. She simply faded into the dim light near the wall. The nurse left the room and requested reassignment shortly after. Now, skeptics will say hospitals are emotionally charged environments. Long shifts, sleep deprivation, stress, old buildings settling. And that's true. Hospitals are full of heightened emotion, fear, relief, and even grief. But that's also what makes them fertile ground for something else, if you believe in that possibility. Repeated trauma layered over decades. Thousands of final breaths. isolation rooms filled with despair. It's not one tragic event. It's accumulation. When Royal Victoria Hospital officially closed in 2015 and operations moved to a newer facility, staff were asked privately about the rumors. Some laughed them off. Some refused to comment. A few admitted that there were parts of the building they avoided during overnight shifts, especially the lower levels, especially the tunnels. Today, the building stands largely unused, pending redevelopment. Windows dark, hallways empty, but locals still tell stories. Urban explorers claim to feel cold drafts in sealed rooms. Some say motion sensors trip without visible cause. Others report hearing footsteps on upper floors that no longer house anyone. And maybe the most unsettling part is this. Hospitals are places of transition, between life and death, between stability and crisis, between clarity and confusion. If any environment holds emotional imprint, it would be a place like that. A place where people beg to go home. A place where some never did. Royal Victoria was designed to save lives, but for over a century, it also witnessed suffering on a scale few buildings ever do, whether that lingers there in memory, energy, or something else entirely. People who've walked its corridors alone say the same thing. It doesn't feel abandoned. It feels occupied, quietly. If the building is eventually restored or demolished, its stories will remain. Because places like that don't just disappear. They settle into the city around them, into whispers, into personal accounts, into late night conversations where someone says, "Have you ever heard about the old Royal Vic?" And now you have. Would you walk those tunnels alone? Or are some buildings better left sealed in memory? This is She's Got Spirits, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.